If you love discovering tools that make you think, wow, that was easy, you're in the right place.
Most QA teams aren't struggling because they don't know how to test. They're struggling because testing just doesn't scale anymore. Think about it. Every new feature means new test cases. Every UI update breaks something, and suddenly your team is stuck maintaining hundreds, sometimes thousands of brittle scripts. You open your dashboard, half the tests are failing, but not because the product is broken, just because something small changed. And now, instead of testing quality, you're debugging your own tests. That's where things start to break down. KaneAI steps in right there, not to replace QA teams, but to actually make testing manageable again. Let's say you're part of a QA team working on a fast-moving product. New features are shipping constantly, UI keeps changing, and your test suite, it's already outdated. Your team ships updates every week, sometimes every few days. A new login flow gets introduced, then a UI tweak, then a validation change, and before you even finish writing test scripts, they're already outdated. Sound familiar? Now here's where KaneAI starts to feel different. Instead of sitting down to write long test scripts, you just describe what you want to test, in plain English. Something like, check login with valid and invalid credentials. And KaneAI doesn't just generate random steps. It actually understands the intent, structures the scenario, and turns it into a usable test. It breaks that into steps. Open login page, enter credentials, validate response. But the real value isn't just saving time writing tests, it's lowering the barrier so more people on your team can contribute. Now imagine this in a real team setting. A product manager wants to make sure a feature works before release, but they don't know automation frameworks. Instead of waiting on QA, they can just describe the scenario themselves. That's a huge shift. Product managers, QA analysts, even developers, everyone can participate in test creation without needing deep automation expertise. Now take it a step further. Imagine you already have documentation, Jira tickets, or product requirements sitting around. Normally, those just stay as reference material. They describe what should happen, but they're disconnected from actual testing. But with KaneAI, those can become actual test cases. And this is the part most people miss. You're not starting from scratch anymore. You can take something like a Jira ticket. Users should be able to reset password via email link. And instead of manually translating that into test cases, KaneAI can turn it into one, step-by-step, structured, ready to run. You're converting what already exists into structured, executable tests. That means better alignment between what's built and what's tested. So instead of starting from zero every time, you're reusing existing knowledge. It also makes your testing process more consistent because everything ties back to real requirements, not just manually written scripts. Now let's talk about how this fits into real workflows, because that's where tools usually fall apart. KaneAI isn't trying to replace everything. It plugs into what you already use. You can connect it with tools like Jira or GitHub, which means testing doesn't live in isolation anymore. So imagine this. A pull request gets created. KaneAI analyzes the changes and suggests relevant test scenarios based on what actually changed. That's not automation for the sake of it. That's context-aware testing. So if a login function was modified, it prioritizes authentication-related tests. If UI changes happen, it focuses there. And whether you're working on web apps, mobile apps, or AP it adapts to those environments without forcing you into one rigid setup. Plus, if your team prefers working with code, you can export those tests into real frameworks and languages, so developers can still review, tweak, and own the final implementation. Now here's where things get really practical. One of the biggest frustrations in QA is test maintenance. UI changes break things, selectors fail, and suddenly half your suite is useless. You build a solid test suite, everything works. Then one small UI change happens, and suddenly tests start failing everywhere. Not because the product is broken, but because selectors changed. Now your team spends hours fixing tests instead of actually testing. KaneAI tackles that with auto-healing. So instead of tests just failing and stopping everything, it can adapt to certain changes and keep things running. And during execution, it doesn't just run tests. It can also surface issues and highlight where things are going wrong. But let's be clear here, and this is important. KaneAI isn't a set it and forget it tool. You still review, you still validate, you still make the final call. What it does is remove the repetitive, time-heavy parts so you can focus on actual quality and decision making. KaneAI basically turns testing into a more collaborative, flexible process instead of a bottleneck you're constantly trying to fix. If you're building or testing products regularly, it's definitely worth exploring. Drop your thoughts below, and if you want more tools like this, you know what to do.